always great to see Brady Quinn. Brady, part of the Big Noon kickoff crew. They were in Happy Valley on Saturday for Michigan's win, and the former NFL quarterback joining us on the program. What did you expect to happen? Like Friday, when you're in Happy Valley and Michigan's coming in, did you think Jim Harbaugh was coaching on Saturday?
Well, initially when I woke up, I did, until Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, had suspended him for the rest of the regular season. And then we kind of got word that Michigan understood this was going to happen. And because of that, they were going to file a TRO and try to create an injunction, which I'm no legal expert, so I'm not going to dive into that. But just from being a player during the lockout back after 2010, 2011, I knew enough to know that, like, well, this is a holiday weekend. We're supporting our veterans, honoring our veterans, and typically, courts don't rule very fast on this. So if they think they're going to be able to get an injunction, it's probably not going to happen in time for this game. Maybe sometime next week. But I think the crazy thing, DP, was I've never gone into like a studio show, and you could probably admit to this too. Like 80-90% of what you prepare for probably goes into the show. When we got up Saturday morning, we had to prepare for like so many different scenarios. I mean, we were honestly waiting for like Jim Harbaugh just to walk out onto the field. And the athletic director at Penn State, Pat Kraft, said he wasn't going to get in the way of it. And we were like fully prepared for like what's going to happen in that moment. Like, do we have a live camera on his hotel room? Like as he walks out and gets into the car to drive to the stadium there, and everyone's booing him, he's looking like the villain. Like I was picturing a WWE type entrance there in Happy Valley. It unfortunately didn't happen, but that was some of the greatest drama I've ever seen when it comes to a college football game, at least the preparation for it.
Let's look at the Big Ten side of this. What exactly are they doing? What do they have to do? What are they, because you got to say to everybody else in the Big Ten, nobody's above, the rules and everything. But help us understand what you think the Big Ten is hoping to accomplish here.
I think they're trying to appease every other Big Ten school, their coach, their athletic directors and presidents, who are looking at this situation saying the NCAA clearly must have enough evidence to be able to look at Michigan and claim that they've broken a rule for sportsmanship, and they should be able to be punished, but we don't want to have to wait until after the season for that to be the case. And where Jim Harbaugh, who knows what could happen? He could go on to the NFL, and this team could go on to win a national championship, and they feel like they probably need to, listen to the rest of the Big Ten coaches out there that feel like, hey, this has been going on for a while, and we feel like, they're in the wrong here, and this needs to stop. The tough thing is it's a precedent that Tony Petitti is going to be setting now in his first year. And I think the thing where my mind wanders to is when I got drafted in the NFL in 2007, Roger Goodell took over as NFL commissioner, and there always existed this player conduct policy within the collective bargaining agreement, but no one had really enforced it the way Roger Goodell did. And I think as he enforced the player conduct policy, there are some unforeseen situations that came up that he was then going to be on the hook for and having to make decisions on, and how he's going to punish players and how one player would be compared to another. And I almost wonder if that's where the Big Ten, or in this case, Tony Petitti, is going with this, where he's going to open up a bunch of other potential issues where if anything happens to a Big Ten team, do they have the investigative arm to be able to look through this and come up with a decision that's not going to somehow end up in the courts? And I think the other thing is, it sounds like, at least from what the Big Ten stated, everything that they're basing their decision to suspend Jim Harbaugh off of was all based on an NCAA investigation, which is unprecedented. So I kind of look at this and wonder where it stops for Tony Petitti moving forward, based on the punishment, not just for a head coach, but the players involved too. And also, it sounded like from their words, they're punishing Jim Harbaugh because he's the figurehead, but they don't necessarily have any direct ties to him yet, outside of he was the head coach there. So it seems like there's still a lot to sort out over the course of the next few weeks, maybe even months, until we know everything. But it feels like also it could be open up Pandora's box for Tony Petitti moving forward.
Yeah, I kept saying due process, just if they're guilty, they're guilty. But now as we keep going on, and maybe this is, moved to the end of the postseason, is there a chance Michigan has to forfeit wins? If you're guilty of cheating, like what is cheating and what do you lose if that's going to – Harbaugh might be suspended for the rest of the regular season, but could they be throwing away a couple of seasons here full of, these victory totals?
Possibly. I mean, who knows? I mean, we've seen the punishment the NCAA has handed out before. It's always kind of like retroactive. They vacate wins and
Yeah.
take away postseasons, and it ends up hurting the current players, not the past players or coaches who was a part of whatever was going on. So it doesn't really seem just in my mind, at least. I think the interesting thing you bring up, though, is like how far does this go as far as providing Michigan an advantage? And I'm sure that opinion varies depending on the coach you talk to. There's some coaches who don't think it helps them quite as much. There's some who think it's a huge advantage. I mean, if you think about like the information they're gathering and the data, it's all, going to be applied to hopefully the right situations once you get into the game. And you're hoping that if Michigan's scouting everyone out, that everyone's using the same signals, same calls. I mean, nowadays it feels like everyone's got sign stealers that are on sidelines trying to figure that out in game. Who knows if there's other schools doing this and they just haven't been caught for doing this. And so there's just a lot of questions as to the advantage that this actually gives Michigan. And I think from a former player, what bothers me about it is it almost takes away from the success this team's had the past couple of years on the field. I mean, this team has been dominant on like, I'll put it this way, this past week, they didn't need to steal any signs. In fact, they didn't need to throw the football in the second half versus Penn State. They ran the ball 32 straight times. They had one pass attempt that ended up getting wiped out for DPI, and they still beat Penn State in Happy Valley.
But why do it, though, Brady? Why do you have somebody who is decoding this if it doesn't help?
That's the hard
or you don't need it.
I think, I mean, who knows, again, how long this has been going on. There's pictures of Connor Stallions on the sidelines at Michigan that predates when a lot of these allegations have been brought up. So I don't know. I mean, if you're only saying, hey, he's only been there the past 2 years, that's not the truth. He's been there before that. And so was it helping them when they weren't winning the Big Ten and they weren't having as great of an advantage? There's still so many questions. I think the reason why you do it is because, like anyone else, you're always trying to find an edge. And they probably thought this was something that, wasn't over the bounds, or if it was against the rules, maybe it was a rogue actor in this case. There's still so much we don't know in this case. So I don't want to speculate on all of it, but I would say this. I feel for the current players that are there. I think they've responded in a manner where they're like, you think we're stealing signs? Like, we'll show you. Like, we'll show you just how good we are. Connor Stallions isn't here anymore. Our head coach has been suspended earlier this year. He wasn't here for this game. We'll just keep winning football games and moving forward. So that's where my thought goes, is I'm just more concerned about the players that are involved in all this and how it impacts them moving forward.
Talking to Brady Quinn. He was at Penn State for Michigan's win. I guess you guys are groupies for Michigan. You're just going to follow them. That's your band. Michigan is going to play Maryland, so you guys are on the road with Michigan again?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of worked out where we had that game anyway, which has typically been our model moving forward. And obviously we have Ohio State, Michigan, which we were going to be at, probably regardless of whether we had that game, but we're fortunate enough to have it every year. So it made a lot of sense coming off the story based on what we're anticipating happening with Harbaugh, maybe even being back coaching next week for the next 2 weeks of the regular season, depending on the injunction. So it just kind of followed suit with our, with what we were doing. So again, hopefully we get that live camera on Jim Harbaugh. Like I've pitched that DP, and I'm not even lying to you. I've told our producer, Bardia, I was like, man, we need to get his hotel a live camera. Like, if we can get a shot of him just like kick back, legs up, just watching the game, or maybe he's up pacing, like who knows? That would be great live TV, like a live camera on Jim Harbaugh, but then also a second box, two boxes with the game going on as well.
I agree. We brought it up over the weekend. We would love to have, instead of the game, I wanted to watch Harbaugh watch the game. I thought that would have been great. Let me ask you about C.J. Stroud and, the kind of the pre-draft information, smear campaigns that happened, because I remember when C.J. Stroud was coming out and the knock was, could he process the information at the line of scrimmage? And I think there was a cognitive test, and he didn't do well, and that got leaked here. How much of that happens even now, that a team may want C.J. Stroud, but then they have to pollute the waters to make sure you don't take C.J. Stroud?
Yeah, a team may do it. An agent may do it. I think the agents are a lot more in that process, too, of leaking out information like that than even the teams in that case. So everyone's trying to throw out smoke screens and posture. I mean, that was the thing that never really made sense about that. And I've never taken that cognitive test. I'm not sure how effective it is. I know there's a lot of people who really believe in it or portions of it, but when you watch the tape, you never saw that. And that was one where, maybe if you get a test like that, you go back and watch it and it either confirms it or it doesn't. But I've always been a big advocate of saying, like, what does the tape tell you? And the things about CJ Stroud's game, which made him the #2 overall pick and made him potentially, looking back on it, where we should have looked at it and said he should have been the #1 overall pick, is his accuracy and playing from the pocket. Like, he was so accurate and lethal downfield throwing the football. And that's what wins. Like, as much as we get enamored with players who can extend plays and create off, script plays, because those are the splash wow plays, that's still not always what wins Super Bowls. I mean, Tom Brady is the best case of that, obviously the greatest of all time, in my opinion. And he played from the pocket and won from the pocket. Now, Mahomes has the ability to create, and he's obviously trying to chase down Tom Brady now. So we'll see where that goes. But that was one of those things that when you looked at CJ Stroud's game, you could have made the case he was the most NFL prepared from that perspective of any of the quarterbacks who were up in last year's draft. You really didn't have any concerns outside of like some of the smoke screens and stuff that people would throw out there.
Yeah, I just watched the Georgia game, and I go, he can play. I mean, he's great, and he's showing that. Is Texas A&M a big-time program?
I think it is. I think when you've got the money to buy out a coach for almost $77 million, I think you have to look at it as one that can even pay a coach that. They've obviously recruited at a really high level, and they've got a storied tradition and history. It's just we haven't seen the results. We've seen flashes of it, but we haven't seen really the results that I think their fan base thinks they should be getting. And quite honestly, probably what the AP poll is most responsible for. And that's the fact that if you look at the last 3 seasons, they've started the preseason ranked top 25, maybe top 20, top 15. Yeah. And then as the season's worn on, they've faded away to the point where they've been unranked. And I think that's a byproduct of the fact that we have these preseason rankings that are based on what? I mean, I know why we do them. Like, you have to do them. It's part tradition, but part like you're selling the games. There's so many teams. It's like, well, if they don't have a number next to them, like, God, is anyone going to watch? It's like, well, yeah, they're still going to watch, but maybe it doesn't feel as important or we can't sell it. I've always been a big advocate of just saying, like, the AP poll doesn't even matter anymore. Like, this is now about the College Football Playoff Committee. Yeah. So why have rankings until then? You just see the record.
Well, sometimes we'll look at a team and we'll go, God, what's wrong with them? Well, what's wrong with them is they were ranked too high to begin with, or somebody was ranked too low and they're like, wow, nobody saw this one coming.
Yeah, and most of those rankings are based on like, hey, maybe how they finished the year before, how many guys they have coming back, what's the recruiting rankings. We typically look at recruiting classes and go, oh, well, if they're a top 10 class, they've got to be able to win a bunch of football games, right? They have talent. And when it's not an exact science measuring how a kid's going to transition from high school to college football. And I think we've seen evidence of that specifically with Texas A&M and how a lot of that star-studded class a few years ago really transitioned into College Station. And there was some locker room issues, cultural issues. And look, Jimbo Fisher's got to be responsible for that. I think that's what you saw at Florida State towards the end of his tenure, like that kind of falling apart. Yeah. And I think that's what's happened here. I mean, he constructed a good staff, but they just couldn't figure out a way of winning. And I think the last thing I'll just point to is quarterback development and having a guy that can play. You had Jameis Winston. He won a Heisman. He helped win a national championship and go to the College Football Playoff. I don't know that Jimbo Fisher was able to kind of find that guy to help carry them at Texas A&M or develop that guy to become that. Outside of Kellen Mond, which I think had their best year in that COVID year, which was kind of a hit or miss year for a lot of teams.
Did we send you a T-shirt? We made up a T-shirt, the Will Ferrell yelling at you from the sidelines, hey, 10, your pants are too high.
I thought it'd be like a Beefo Brady T-shirt at this point.
No. Paulie's going out to get it. Are you a double XL?
I mean, I would like to think I'm a quadruple XL, but I'm probably not like an XL now, honestly.
An XL?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm a guy who's wearing golf shirts now, DP. It's not fun getting old.
What happened to you?
I can't hit the ball as far off the tee. I try power lifting and I hurt my back half the time. So.
Here's the T-shirt.
That's awesome. Thank you. Did you get Will one too, though? Does he get one as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we made up a few of these. So if you would like a T-shirt, we'd be more than happy to send you a couple. You know what? You have all your daughters. Maybe we could send it for the entire family. You'd have to explain to them exactly what it means. But Will Ferrell yelling at you from the sidelines at USC Notre Dame, making fun of your pants.
Look, if you're going to be famous for one thing, I'll take that. I'd love to be famous for Will Ferrell heckling me on the sidelines that my pants were too high.
Yeah. Great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
That's Brady Quinn. They'll be in College Park. It's Michigan and Maryland. The Big Noon kickoff crew. Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio.